live episode of Film
Can I
Foundation.
mention one thing though that we didn't talk about that was a big announcement today that I
Yeah.
know other people in the comments will want to talk about or at least chime in on?
Yeah.
We are getting more Lord of the Rings movies.
It's wild. Yeah.
And on top of everything else, it's directed by motherfucking Andy Serkis, who one of my friends on my Facebook when I posted about it, they were like, he's just trying to win that Oscar for a CGI actor. You're right. He fucking is. And he should have won it. He should have won it for that last Planet of the Apes movie, but he didn't win it there. So there's a high percentage chance that this movie pushes that in the right direction. But holy cow. Holy cow, holy cow. More Lord of the Rings movies with Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens and Fran Jackson all like involved too. So it's crazy. Crazy time. I mean, the TV show being announced was crazy, but now a like live action movie, like holy cow, guys. Yeah. I love Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is amazing. He does not get enough credit for his mocap abilities and just him being an actor and a director. We were talking about this earlier. He directed that second Venom movie, which I enjoyed a fair amount. It's a silly movie, but it's a fun silly movie. Yeah, and if anybody's curious, if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings extended and remastered will be in theaters in June of this year. And I'm going to throw this out there. First Hobbit movie's not bad. Second Hobbit movie's okay. Third Hobbit movie, oh. I mean, look, the best part about those Hobbit movies was casting Martin Freeman as Bilbo. He's so good as Bilbo. Like, he's so good as Bilbo. He's kind of one of the best things of all of the Lord of the Rings. And as far as I'm concerned, that might be a hot take, but if you don't at least find Martin Freeman charming as Bilbo, and that can carry you through the first movie, the first movie's fine. Beyond that is just the second and third ones are just like a CGI fuckfest.
I've not seen any of the Hobbit films yet.
I mean, again, they're fine, but the more you watch them, the less quality they are. It's gonna be a prequel, Sibner, by the way. It's gonna take place in between. Well, I guess it's gonna flesh out all the story from before the first movie, where they talk about it in the book. They're looking for Gollum, so I'm excited. I'm personally very excited, but also with a little bit of trepidation, given comments talking about the Hobbit movies. Given I've seen the Hobbit movies in theaters, so.
All right. Are we ready for an episode of Film Foundations attached to an episode of Reconnected?
We're going to do this live for everybody. And then we won't release this for months.
But it'll be great, and we'll all remember it as it comes out. So we are going to go through everything, and so everybody can understand, just in case you haven't heard any of the first two episodes of Film Foundations, we're going to be very explanatory as we're going through here of the format and how we're doing everything, and going to do an actual intro like it's a full episode and everything. So if you got questions and if you got opinions, we definitely want to hear this as we go through. So we are going to start the episode and go from here. So hello, everyone. Welcome back to Film Foundations, the collaborative show between Weirding Way Media and Someone's Favorite Productions. I am your co-host, Ryan Verrill from the Disc Connected and Someone's Favorite Productions.
And I'm your other ho-host, boy.
Ho-host.
Ho-host. I am your other co-host, Chris Dashew from Weirding Way Media and the Culture Cast and various other terrible opinions people think I have on the internet about movies.
On this show, we will be asking and answering 4 questions about a given topic that is surrounding either an actor, director, microgenre, or like tonight's topic, a franchise. Tonight, we are discussing all of the Batman films. Our job is to entice you to broaden your horizons on film, encourage you to travel down film tangents and side roads that you may have never traveled down otherwise. And Batman's interesting because there's so many different eras. There's so many different actors that have played him. This is one of those things where we started the show to introduce people to things they likely have never seen any of. But with this, I think it's very easy to have only seen like one iteration of Batman and never even heard a lot of discourse on the others because they've kind of been talked about so many times in the past that people don't talk about them very much anymore. So we're going to do like a light intro to some of these. We're going to discuss them, going to talk about some of the history. And on that front, Chris, what's your history with Batman?
I think for me, Batman is up there, if not for me, one of my favorite superheroes. I mean, this conversation comes up a lot in terms of the MCU or DC and where you come down on it. I think the MCU has, I think that the MCU and the DC, DC and Marvel, however you want to talk about it, just the comic books themselves. That tribalization that we see now has kind of always been around, but I think Batman was holding up superhero stuff along with Superman for so long, and then Marvel took that from them in 2008 with Iron Man and have been doing it better since then in terms of the ability to craft a believable world. I mean, look, Marvel has kind of fallen off too because they dug too deep, to quote Lord of the Rings. But I love Batman. I mean, Batman is my favorite superhero. I mean, there's people in the your mom's saying it. I mean, it's true. Batman is he is a lot of people's favorite.
I was very fortunate to grow up in the early 90s and having the Tim Burton films accompanied by Batman the Animated Series is a magical way to start a fascination with a character like Batman.
Almost got him, baby. That's like fucking amazing, that episode of the show.
Yeah, this is gonna be special because Batman's kind of been there for a long time. Obviously, I look at Batman as somebody that I love because I've always been fascinated with mysteries and detectives, and so things like your Columbo, like we were talking about earlier, or your Hardy Boys, or your Nancy Drew, or Encyclopedia Brown. I loved that shit as a kid, and so many of the Batman movies and the Batman TV show, especially like the animated ones that they've been able to really flesh out some of these characters with. I've just truly loved the way that they've given some of that detective feel, and I think finally they nailed that with the Matt Reeves Batman. It finally feels like an actual detective character. But every iteration has a lot of high points. There's definitely some low points in there as well. This all truly starts because of comic books, obviously way back in the 30s with Detective Comics, and that leads to literally DC. That's where we get DC from. But we really have to kind of start this with the overarching TV show with Adam West and Burt Ward from the 60s, which I loved it. It is so campy and silly and so fun, and it's such an interesting thing to look at because so many people nowadays look at it as it's only silly and it's just let's laugh at this, but like it's so pure camp when you watch it in the style of let's make this a comic book show. That's exactly how they went in on it, and it works. I mean, Adam West running with the giant bomb off of a pier is fucking hilarious in all of the best ways. I really wish people would watch it and give it some more appreciation because so many people just haven't seen it.
And Adam West was almost cast as James Bond because of how good he was as Batman. So that's also a weird piece of trivia from the time. No, Batman 66 is it's I don't know, man. Like I'm with you. Like I could totally get someone watching it today and being like, "What the fuck am I watching?" But it's fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's funny too, as Stan kind of points out. It's very funny, and that is a thing that I wouldn't say people necessarily now know Batman for being funny.
Right.
So I get it, and that's the thing. One of the movies we're going to talk about, I contend, is actually an attempt to recapture the tone of '66 Batman, but let's just say people didn't want that. People didn't know how to deal with it. People weren't sure how to receive it, and you may know what I'm alluding to. I'll talk about it when we get to it. But yeah, Batman, and I saw it in the comments too, which I do want to address. The usage of Batman has always been very interesting because to some of the comments' points, Batman is sometimes a superhero. Batman is sometimes a detective. And for me, and I would agree with the comments. I think Batman works best when he's embracing the detective side of it, because the superhero side of it is when all of a sudden things start to blow up and we get these like big world issues like Crisis on Infinite Earths, stuff like that, which are these, big world involved things where Superman's there and Wonder Woman's there and the Justice League is there. So yeah, like it's weird because Batman, again, for all intents and purposes, is a detective character. But then he is injected into these bigger stories, and he kind of loses the detective part of it. And some of the movies do the same thing to great or lesser effect as well. So Batman's weird.
My wish for Batman the entire time, I just wish that somebody took Batman and took some of the smaller comics that are beloved by people and make a standalone single run Batman live action movie out of it that people can appreciate because it has an incredible story. I mean, give us like the Court of Owls run would be incredible to see in a live action film. Hush would be incredible to see in a live action film.
It would have to be 3 movies, but Hush would be like, or the Batman, the Elseworlds Batman, like Vampire Batman. Good, give me that. Fucking inject that shit into my veins, man.
I showed Long Halloween earlier. It would be incredible to see a proper live action Long Halloween done.
Yeah.
Like with enough money to put into it that they're not expecting a franchise, but just let's make a good movie. Like that would be incredible.
Yeah. No, and again, Stan's point about the character being incredibly elastic, he is. And that's what makes Batman such an interesting character, because you can take him all over the place. And you can make him into what you want. You can take away certain things. And I'm not saying all characters like that in comic books aren't incredibly elastic, as Stan mentioned, but Batman seems to move within genres very easily compared to some of the other ones. I mean, you don't see like a superhero. Well, I guess there's Superman versus Alien, Superman versus Predator, but those always felt weird. Like Batman versus Alien that comic is certifiably fucking insane. And if you've never read it, you should go check it out. And then they did, I think, at least one more, possibly 2 more. But in the second one, they start breeding the aliens with DNA from the rogues gallery of Batman's people. So there's like a Joker alien and a Two-Face alien. And it's ridiculous. But again, it works because Batman, I think, has always been not horror adjacent, but because of what you expect from his stories, it always feels like the horror world is always just touching Batman because of Killer Croc, because of Scarecrow, because his villains are monsters for the most part. Like a lot of them are literally monsters. So yeah, I love Batman.
After Batman 66 and the TV show, we had a bit of a break. It wasn't until 1989 that we got Tim Burton's Batman, and it completely really busted open the whole superhero thing in a way that was super accessible for everybody. Incredible cast. Nicholson is great. DeVito is amazing. The really important thing though is because it's Burton, you get a character in Gotham. It feels like Gotham. And then of course you get Keaton as Batman, which is the iconic thing. A lot of us grew up on Keaton playing Batman. How do you feel about Burton's Batman?
I reserve my answer for later. See, that's the thing, though. Like, here's the thing that gets lost in the conversation. Go back and look at the reception to Michael Keaton being cast as Batman. People went fucking nuts, and I'm not saying they were happy. It was like the backlash of backlashes. People were writing into Starlog about how pissed off they were that Michael Keaton, a short guy, was cast as Batman. I mean, yeah, it's insanity for how good those movies end up being. Yeah, Batman 1989, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but it might be an answer here.
DeVito wasn't in that first one. I know I brought him up. He is in the next one, which was also directed by Tim Burton. That's Batman Returns, and then we get Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman in that one, which did fairly well. And then, of course, just logically, that has to lead to Batman Forever, which a lot of people are very used to throwing darts at because they don't love it very much. Not quite as bad as Batman and Robin, but yeah, a lot of people hated these. These are the ones that I grew up on. I watched these probably more than any of these other Batman movies because I was the right age. I was like 10 years old when these were coming out and just loved seeing the character I loved on the big screen and seeing it played in a movie like that. And then, of course, around this time, because of the animated series, we also get the animated masterpiece, in my opinion, of Batman Mask of Phantasm.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Batman Forever is fucking great. Like, I get it. I get that people don't vibe with it, but it came out in the 90s, yo. And you know what? Actually, the best thing about Batman Forever is the story that Jim Carrey tells about how much Tommy Lee Jones hates him, which I do. I forget what I don't tolerate your tomfoolery or whatever, something to that effect. And it's like, oh man, this must have been a weird set. But hey, speaking of dodging a bullet with Bill Murray not being cast in '89's Batman, talk about dodging a bullet with Billy Baldwin being Batman Forever's Batman. Good night. I don't dislike Batman Forever. I get it, though. I get the dislike. But to your point, I was the right age. I was like 5 years old when it came out. They had toys at McDonald's.
Right.
They had those cups at McDonald's, those glass cups at McDonald's. Yeah, Batman was inescapable in the 90s.
I will say the 90s was Batman. Like,
Yeah.
it was
Oh,
the
yeah.
decade of Batman for sure. And then because those were like, I mean, obviously they started great and then waned by the end. We got no Batman for a little while again. It's another 8-year break, and then Christopher frickin' Nolan comes in and makes a trilogy of Batman films with Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. There are countless people that look at The Dark Knight as literally the quintessential comic book movie, which I know that we're going to be getting into in a little while because I know at least one of us disagrees with that. And of course, around all of this, Christopher Nolan is not known for a franchise type of film like this. So this was an odd time for him and odd time for fans of his. I still think it's interesting that he made a couple of these, but I mean, his best movie was made during that period, but it wasn't one of those movies. I still think he should have stayed a little bit away. But then we get the brand new DCEU stuff. We get Batman versus Superman, Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League version where they changed it up. And then he was just in The Flash last year.
Wait. Zack Snyder's Justice League is where they turned the movie that was 2 hours into 4 hours. That's what they did. And I watched the whole damn thing and did a live stream about it. And then I had comments on my iTunes about how I'm a hater for Batman versus Superman, just whatever. Zack Snyder, you know what? Good for you that people are willing to go out on a ledge for you on the internet and are willing to make their opinions so well known that they're going to walk around and scream Snyder cut now. But God,
Right.
insufferable bullshit, frankly. Like, I'm sorry. It started an uncomfortable trend of things that I don't really like, and I think you would agree, which is pandering and allowing people to do things that's like the world is not better off with or without this. It doesn't really matter. And yeah, The Prestige, I think, yeah, Nolan peaked early, baby. Prestige is an amazing. Look, Ryan already alluded to it. I'm not the biggest fan of Chris Nolan, but The Prestige, how could you not love that movie? Really,
It's his best film by
yep,
far.
agreed.
Then
And to Paul's point, the 4-hour Justice League is somehow actually better than the 2-hour Justice League.
the last thing that we can really talk about, we did get a brand new Matt Reeves directed Batman in March of 2022. There is a second one coming in October of 2026. Currently, that's when it's dated. That's a long wait, first of all. And then also, I guess technically in Joker, Bruce Wayne is mentioned and hinted at, but it's not a Batman movie in any way. But those are the theatrical Batmans that we've gotten throughout the years. And it's been such an up and down ride for a lot of people that a lot of people have checked out. And so that's kind of why we wanted to talk about it. I feel like it's a good one for the chat to step in here. So we're going to get into our questions. The first question on Film Foundations is always, what do you consider the foundational title for our topic tonight, which is Batman? And so essentially, what do you think, if somebody has never seen any Batman movie, what do you think is the first one that they should watch, Chris?
Wow, you're just going to put me on the spot, eh?
On the spot, let's do it.
Yeah, I deserve it. I mean, because I don't know. Again, this is polarizing, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Batman 1989 all the way. And you know what? I've never seen Batman Returns. It's on my list of things to watch. I'm watching it later this year in September. for You've Never Seen September. So
Wow.
we're finally getting around to it. I am. But man, Michael Keaton is Batman. He's amazing. Jack Nicholson's amazing. Everything about the movie is well thought out. I mean, they had the right director at the right time, doing the right thing, making the kind of movie that needed to come out then. But at the same time, it's a starting place for Batman that gets through all the stuff for those of you that have never seen it as well. That's the thing that has to be taken into consideration here. I can't in good conscience suggest the second movie in a trilogy as the foundational film because
One of us might.
yeah, I know you might, but in my mind that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at. No,
Sibner-
Ryan's leading the discussion, not me.
Sibner, this is kind of the point. We are.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We want to gatekeep, right? Isn't that the point of this? I'm just kidding. Oh, wait, is this a gatekeeping show?
The
I'm just
point
kidding.
is to not gatekeep.
I know,
So
that's-
even
yes.
If we haven't watched all of them. Like I haven't seen any of the DCEU ones, but I have a feeling those weren't going to be answers for any of these.
What if they were though?
Never know.
Aha, see? Yeah, I get it. I mean, look, I understand I understand that sentiment, and I don't think that you have an inappropriate opinion saying, you guys are talking about this and you've never seen Returns. I literally just explained to you, I'm watching Returns later this year because someone asked me to watch it for a month for them. So let me reiterate. At the end of the day, if I've never seen Batman Returns, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, I love Batman 1989. It doesn't detract from my love of that movie. And at the same time, to answer the question you asked, Batman 1989 does the origin story. It does the villain of Batman that everybody knows. Look, I'm not going to say done the best because I think Heath Ledger is the best version of the Joker. But Jack Nicholson's amazing in that movie for what is needed for that movie. The tone of that movie is needed to be a Jack Nicholson type. Because again, like it's a very much an elevated tone and it's a comic book brought to life. I mean, that's the thing that I love about the movie is that it's a comic book brought to life and you can see that on the screen. So yeah, I love Batman 1989. That's my choice here.
Before I get into Batman 1989, I do want to say that when you watch Batman Returns, I'm very curious to see what you think because it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah.
It's got honestly, like what they do with Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing in that movie. Some of the way that it's Tim Burton, so he knows how to capture people in a way that feels larger than life, obviously.
Right. Oh yeah.
With everything that he's done. So yeah, I think you'll really like it. I think that you have a good pick, and I couldn't really argue with it. I think it is a very still beloved title in the entire franchise. I think it's one that a lot of people, base their love on this character of simply from this movie. I think it's a great title. My pick, I've already alluded to it. I will say I think The Dark Knight is the best one for somebody to watch first. And it's interesting to make that as a choice because it is the second and it's not an origin story, and I get that. But my argument against that is I think the Batman origin is just kind of zeitgeist knowledge at this point. Like
That's
everybody
at this point though.
Yeah. And that's what
But-
we're doing is
No, I
discussing
know,
with
but-
future generations.
Right, exactly. Like to your point though, like it's a fair answer because like you said, it's like look, it's the same fucking thing with Spider-Man. They don't have to show the Spider-Man origin story anymore, guys. Like we're good. Unless you're doing like Miles Morales or
When it's
Spider-Man
a different
2099.
origin.
Yeah, exactly. But I only say I say it covers the origin of Batman. I think it covers it in the most straightforward, obvious way. I mean, to your point, 2022's Batman doesn't do it either.
Yeah, you're right. It is something that people are, it's divisive. I totally get that. Sibner says, are we talking best film or for someone not knowledgeable to understand the story? If you don't do the origin for that person, they won't get it. And that's why I just defended that.
Right.
First off, we're not answering what is the best film or for someone not knowledgeable to understand the story here, because the origin is literally just like public knowledge at this point.
Well, part of it is making it the most approachable thing. That is what we're getting at.
And
Honestly,
so-
Sibner, what you'll realize very quickly is our second answer is often our favorite thing. That's kind of, our second favorite.
The second answer is usually the most interesting part of the conversation. So
Yeah,
we will be
totally.
discussing that one soon. The Dark Knight. I don't want to say too much about it because I know it's something that is overly discussed. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it's a very great movie. I think that Heath Ledger is probably the best visage of a villain that we're ever going to see on screen for a Batman story. Probably, I think it's great that we also get probably the best version of Two-Face in any of these movies. Unless we start talking about the animated, which is very different, of course.
You like him better than Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah, I do.
I think Tommy Lee Jones fits the tone of Batman Forever just fine.
Yeah, he does. He absolutely fits.
But yeah, I mean, I honestly find the Dark Knight's usage of Two-Face to be kind of an afterthought. Me personally. But I get where you're coming from. I totally get it. Like, The Dark Knight is a movie that I have a very weird history with. That being, I loved it when it came out, and since then, it has depreciated in value to the point where I don't even want to watch it anymore. Like, Heath Ledger's great. And that's kind of where I leave it. Like, Sibner and I think, are on the same page. Because I get it. Like, Dark Knight, I understand its appeal. I understand why people like it. Like I said, I loved it when it came out. I literally went and saw it opening night at midnight with my friends. I get it. Like, a lot of us got swept up in the excitement of Batman. And that was a big deal, especially for what it was being advertised as, the fact that it was Heath Ledger. But yeah, like, for me, Dark Knight, I mean, you said it best. Like, Chris Nolan had no right being around this franchise. And you know what? They're great movies, but are they great Batman movies? That's the question I always put to anybody. Is like, they're great movies. Well made, well shot, whatever. But is The Dark Knight a good movie in terms of what the genre it's in is? I mean, I don't know. It's going to vary from person to person. The Dark Knight for me is a movie, like I said, loved it when it came out. It's kind of depreciated a little bit since, but I totally understand why people like it because it is a good, well-made movie and has a great performance at the center of it with Heath Ledger.
I do think The Dark Knight is a lot more than Heath Ledger. I want to point out a couple other small things. I think that this movie is paced very, very well. It kind of goes and doesn't really slow down, and there are some of these other entries. There are some meandering points in some of them. And to be quite honest, I think that's my biggest problem with the other two Nolan films. I think Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises have some dull periods that are really difficult to overlook completely.
Where would you rank them? Those three?
Just those three? I would probably say The Dark Knight is better than Batman Begins is better than Dark Knight Rises.
So 2, 1, 3.
2, 1, 3. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to defend that third movie. And to Sibner's point, the second movie has a lot of weird stuff that people forget. Like the whole Tokyo side plot. The climax of that movie is like, Chris Nolan doesn't know how to shoot a climax of a movie like this, right? Like, that's what we found out with these movies is he has no idea how to film action, so he just fucking doesn't. Is that what it is? Like, that Dark Knight Rises climax is pretty bad. Right? Like, Tom Hardy's, the whole thing with Bane and the way Bane is treated is just...
It's real bad, yeah.
But in a lot of ways, like, The Dark Knight is the same. It just kind of gets away with it. Like, it just kind of gets away with it. Because it's a good movie. Dark Knight Rises is not a great movie.
I think The Dark Knight has just a far better script. That's the biggest thing, right?
Sure, I agree with you there. And I actually have a soft spot for Batman Begins, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stuff with the boats and the sonar spy stuff is just like, it's a slog. It's
the boat scene is amazing.
In anything but Batman.
I disagree fully.
I know, but that's why you picked it. It's my point. Like, we just have two different minds here of what we're wanting from this kind of movie.
Well, that and we do have some questions about like what this first question is. So I do want to explain again for Sibner and for everybody watching that this is not about best movie or anything. What we got to do is put our mindset into somebody who's never seen any of these. And so one of the reasons I picked The Dark Knight is because it kind of kicked off this modern mentality that we have about comic book movies. And so that's why I think right now it is the most approachable because of Nolan is why we have these super dark, everything has to be gritty, fucking dark ass comic book, no happiness movies.
Can I say though, and we talked about this pre-recording, so this is a little bit of a not pre-rehearsed, but I'm actually going to counterpoint there to that because I really detest what Chris Nolan did for big budget movies for like a decade, which was everything had to be grim, dark, and serious.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying
including
it's a good
fucking
thing.
James Bond. Of all the goddamn things in the world, you turned James Bond grim, dark, and serious. I mean, that's fine. I like Daniel Craig, but those James Bond movies, similarly to these Batman movies, the Nolan ones, you take the James Bond name out of it, it could be anybody, really. Batman's a little different because you have a guy dressed up like a bat. I mean, look, I would put The Dark Knight in my top 5 Batman movies, but like, okay, so what, right? Like,
Right.
I'm with you. Like, I think either of our entry points are a good one if you have different expectations. And yes, Casino Royale is a damn near perfect movie, but it's the exception that proves the rule. Because we all know how good Spectre is, right?
I don't.
I know you don't. You've made it a life choice to stay away from James Bond movies. We'll never see a James Bond film Foundations. I guess it'll be led by me primarily, I'm assuming. Because have you seen any James Bond movies?
I have, and I already said we should, but we should break it out into an episode for each actor.
Oh yeah, Timothy Dalton, 2 movies.
Okay, maybe we throw that in with something else.
Yeah, George Lazenby, 1 movie.
So again, the way that we have to approach this first question always is not just like what do we think is great or what do we think whatever. It's more about like approaching it for other people who have not seen any of these. So this one, agreed. I think that Nolan did kind of screw up here. That it's this awkward ass. Let me make these super dark movies that he probably shouldn't have been making to begin with. But he changed modern cinema. There's no doubt about that. The way that he made these movies has changed the way that the mainstream looks at these films. And so somebody out there that's somehow never seen a Batman movie, I think you're very likely to enjoy The Dark Knight because you've probably been catered to with these new style films over the last, how long has it been since The Dark Knight? 16 years? Like there's
since The Dark Knight, since Batman Begins, it's been almost 20 years.
Yeah, that's insane.
Fucking nuts. It's 20 years next year.
So yeah, I think that The Dark Knight is a great first entry. You see some incredible conversations in this movie. I think that the tension through some of those conversations is really well done. I like The Dark Knight. It's not my favorite Batman movie, but I do think it's the best entry point. But again, as Chris and I talked about, I think the second question usually leads to our best discussion. So, Chris, could you recommend a lesser known film within our topic? And usually this is like, hey, this probably wouldn't be great as a first time watch into our topic, but maybe one that if somebody were to watch it first, it may even turn them away from the rest of it. So, Chris, what is your choice for question 2?
I'm not going to be uncontroversial here. I mean, this is a pretty uncontroversial pick. I'm going to go with The Batman from 2022. I mean, I can completely understand, and I have talked to a lot of people. It took me up until this year to watch it. It's 2 years now. Because the amount of people I had heard tell me it was boring and long and was... I mean, it was an arm's length of people. Tons of people told me how boring it was. And I was like, okay, maybe it is. I'm not going to put it in my top list of things to watch. Watched it this year, and my God. I mean, Robert Pattinson, look, I've been a Robert Pattinson defender for a while. When they were like, he's going to be cast as Batman, I was like, hell yeah. I know people are like, it's the guy from Twilight. It's like, Kristen Stewart was in that movie too, and she's a great actress. And those, like... You can't blame Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart for wanting to have a nest egg for the rest of their lives. So, and I understand the Mask of the Phantasm being an answer here that a lot of people would probably go with. And I'm not saying I don't like the Mask of the Phantasm. It's just, I think the Batman builds on what you were talking about with The Dark Knight, which is taking it seriously, but then pulling it back into the idea of he's a detective. Because that's the thing about the Batman from 2022. He's a detective. It's like the first time in live action Batman movies, he has actually felt like a detective within the scope of the movie. And what the movie's asking of him is to be a detective. It's essentially Batman versus the Zodiac Killer in a lot of ways. Like, that's kind of where that movie is drawing from. It's very Seven adjacent. So that's why I wouldn't suggest it as anyone's first thing, because A, it is a very long movie. It's almost 3 hours long, which I know some people will bristle at. I don't, you don't. But at the end of the day, I think Pattinson makes a case for being Batman for a lot more people than anybody else has up until this point, because he makes the character his own, and he also does a good Bruce Wayne that we haven't really seen that kind of Bruce Wayne either. So that's the other thing we haven't really talked about. Some actors play a better Bruce Wayne than they do Batman. I think Christian Bale's better Bruce Wayne than he is Batman. I think that voice thing, the Rachel, where is she? Oh my Lord. I mean, it's funny. I know it's not supposed to be funny, but it's kind of goof. It's campy unintentionally. And the Batman 2022 has some of those lighter moments, but has a great cast, has Jeffrey Wright, Andy Serkis,
And
Robert
it's actually
Pattinson.
Jeffrey Wright this time.
Yeah, Paul Dano. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting people, but Jesus.
Colin Farrell.
Right. Well, so many people I have talked to didn't know it was Colin Farrell, which is just like the greatest thing about that makeup, is that he is under it but not lost in it.
Yeah. So I was actually going to ask this question after my answer for the second question, but may as well get over here now because you just brought it up. What is your favorite Batman and what is your favorite Bruce Wayne? Like, who's your favorite actor playing Batman? Who's your favorite actor playing Bruce Wayne?
My favorite, I would say my favorite Batman is Robert Pattinson's Batman, and my favorite Bruce Wayne is
Wow.
See, I don't think Christian Bale is not turning it up. I think Christian Bale's pretty great as Bruce Wayne. But I mean, there is that line from Keaton. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. And that's fucking Bruce Wayne. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go with with Michael Keaton for Bruce Wayne. But I don't think Val Kilmer is a bad choice either, cuz Val Kilmer is really good. Like, that's the thing. Frankly, Batman Forever doesn't get enough love. We haven't talked about it enough. It's a movie that, I don't know, it's so 90s it hurts. It's got Kiss from a Rose by Seal in it, for fuck's sake. But man, I think for the most part there's not any really bad Batman movies. And yes, I have seen Batman Dead End. I believe Batman Dead End is that the fan film that has the Xenomorph in it at the end? Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember seeing it at Comic-Cons on TVs that had VHS players built into them. People were trying to sell bootleg VHSs of the short film. If that's the right thing, Stan, tell me if I'm wrong. But look, I don't think there's any wrong answer here. I don't think anybody couldn't. I think, well, in the
you could say
tell me
George
if I'm-
Clooney, I guess.
I don't think George Clooney's. I don't think George Clooney's. Again, I think Clooney is the Batman for some people, to the point that they brought him back. So, look, frankly, I don't think there's an indefensible answer other than Ben Affleck. Sorry. But I don't think anybody's going to defend Batman versus Superman, Justice League, or any. I mean, I don't know if anyone's going to outright be like, Ben Affleck's my Batman. Like,
Right.
I've never heard anybody say that. Maybe I'm nuts, but maybe that person's going to comment and tell us. But that's not something I've heard a lot of people go out on a limb for. But everybody else, most every other Batman gets a defense from somebody as their favorite.
So the way I have to answer this, first of all, is I have to put the qualifier that I can only talk about live action. Because if we're talking about animated, Kevin Conroy will be Batman until the day I die.
Right. Like, that's not even fair. It's like saying who's the best Joker. It's Mark fucking Hamill. Duh.
Right.
Like,
But I'm kind of surprised that you said Pattinson. That is also my pick for Batman. I think he is a very great Batman. And I think I'm mostly impressed, obviously, with the detective side. We've already talked about that a bit. But one of the other things that is a big deal for me is they show that he is, like, discovering this side of him. He fucks up. He's not somebody that is perfect. And they never would have allowed George Clooney to mess up and hit a bridge or something like that.
No.
It just would not have been possible. I do admit I was really close to saying Michael Keaton as well for this, but I do think that I'm going to go with Christian Bale. I think he's a really great, like very suave type of Bruce Wayne, which we needed. And the bigger thing is he is the way that he is so dedicated to that role in those 3 movies. I love absolutely, and he, you know, all in with the way that he works out and he's logical and he thinks smart and all of that. I just don't think he's a very good Batman. I really don't love his Batman at all.
Because it was never about Batman for Chris Nolan. That's the problem. Right. Like, it just doesn't. Chris Nolan wasn't interested in making a Batman movie. He was interested in deconstructing the superhero myth, and they were just like, "Hey, you Batman." It's like, okay, so yeah. I mean, Affleck's Batman is the most physically imposing Batman because he like the physicality that Ben Affleck's Batman brings in not Justice League, but Batman versus Superman. There's that scene in the warehouse that's pretty great. Like, I'll concede that, but man, Ben Affleck just couldn't seem less fucking interested the longer those movies go on, to the point where he himself was like, I don't fucking care. I don't want to keep doing this. Like, which is why they literally brought somebody else in to end the DCEU's version of Batman. They literally went, hey, Michael Keaton, right? Because here's the thing you didn't mention. The Flash is technically a Batman movie, too. Michael Keaton Batman. I don't know how many of y'all have seen The Flash. There's some CGI in that movie that is, wow. There's like a Zoetrope scene that they keep using over and over, and I was convinced that was previs. Like, it's not previs though. That is the way the film was released and seen. Yeah, it's crazy to me. But yeah, The Flash is not going to show up here other than in passing. Hot pile of caca. Yeah, I mean, look, they brought Michael Keaton back, but to what end, I guess?
Right. Well, to end the DCEU, basically.
Right. Yeah, and again, like they tried to shoehorn a Batman movie into a Flash movie. Guess you guys have a lot of faith in your Flash movie then, huh? Like, it's so bizarre.
So to finish up what started as an answer to the second question for you for a long time ago, I will say this was very close to being my answer as well. I truly loved the 2022 Batman. I genuinely a 5-star film for me. I appreciate one of the other big things. I guess, you know, we've talked about him screwing up. We've talked about his detective work. I love the way they started this film too. The fact that criminals are actually scared of the nighttime. Right. And that's a huge part of the lore of Batman. People are actually afraid to be out when his light is in the sky. Like that's a big deal. And they really nailed it for that movie. I truly loved the way that they took Colin Farrell's character and made it this larger than life being. I think the stuff they did with Paul Dano was great. The only thing I didn't love, I think this movie has 2 or 3 different endings, and none of them are good. None of the endings for this movie are well thought out. None of them come together. I feel like they probably should have melded all 2.5 of them together to find something sort of cohesive. But other than that, I think this is a pretty great movie. I do understand the length being a problem, and that's partially because of the third act that is like 2.5 acts long just for that third act.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, we already talked about Dark Knight and the way that movie ends. The Batman 2022 has a similar ending problem of just like, what do we do here? I'm curious to see what the next one is, because I hope they like what Batman movie doesn't have a kind of a problematic third act. The original Batman '89 is pretty great.
It's pretty great. Yeah.
Again, Batman Returns, can't speak to that. Everything else kind of, I mean, live action, their third acts are kind of all over the place. I mean,
yeah, and Stan says the length is no problem for me. The length itself is not the problem for me. It's the fact that I don't feel like they stick the landing. You got to justify that length, and I think that they let that go ever so slightly with the fake out ending that they have there.
And not everything needs to be Return to the King, like 3 endings for fuck's sake. Like,
so the second question, my pick for this one. Funny enough, I didn't even mean to do this. I meant to read out all of the titles, and I skipped over one, and it's the one that I'm picking for this one.
I was about to say, you didn't mention the one that I was like, this is going to be his pick. You didn't mention it.
My pick for like an underseen one that it would be weird to watch as your first entry into all this. I got to show some love right now for the Lego Batman. Uh, this movie is so much better than it has any right to be. I believe it was like 2 years ago on one of the streams with Flip on this channel. I was discussing all of the ranked Batman movies, and this was like number 5 on my list of all of the Batman movies. This movie's incredible. The comedy is great. The way that the set design is, because it's all Legos, it's filmed in a lot of scenes. No. I never said animated was off limits. No. I said to answer who was the best Batman. That means I would have to say animated is off limits. Lego Batman is up there as one of the greats by far. This movie, it's filmed in a way that gives me like Batman the Animated Series vibes, and the voice acting is incredible. But the biggest thing, like, if you are a fan of Batman, this movie is going to pay off in spades because there's references to everything in this movie. You're going to get so many like never talked about before villains discussed. You're going to get all of the costumes made fun of. You're going to get mention of bat nipples. You're going to get like everything under the sun is a part
Bat
of
credit
this movie.
card, condiment,
Yeah, it's amazing.
condiment king, all the things.
It's,
Kite man, everything.
it's so well made and thought out, and you can tell like this is one of those movies that could have been very patronizing, but instead it was very obviously just made by people who loved Batman to death and grew up with it. And like, yeah, the first Lego movie is great. This I think is by far the best Lego movie that they've made, like hands down, head and shoulders above any of them by far. But yeah, I do think because of those references and all of those other jokes that you're not going to understand, this would be a pretty poor choice to watch as your first foray into Batman, because you got to understand all of those other references to really appreciate this one. If you've never seen it and you've seen many other Batman movies, go check out Lego Batman. I don't know if, you know, we got many people watching that don't check out animated stuff because it's for kids or whatever. I know there's a lot of people on like film Twitter that think like that. The Lego Batman movie is a freaking amazing movie. Like, this movie is underseen and should be high up on everybody's list because it is a damn near masterpiece.
And produced by Lord and Miller. So Lord and Miller are two of my favorite filmmakers right now because they understand the assignment every time they're brought on. I mean, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, for fuck's sake. I mean, you mentioned the Lego movie. The Lego movie's no slouch of its own.
Yeah, it's
the
great.
Lego Batman movie doesn't exist without the Lego movie. Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of the Lego movie. I haven't seen the Lego Batman movie enough. I did see it in theaters when it came out. And I mean, look, Will Arnett as Batman is inspired casting. I mean, obviously he was in the Lego movie as Batman, but the fact that they kept it and continued to roll with it is just. And then Galifianakis, and I think my favorite character in the movie is Kate Micucci as Clayface, which is the funniest casting in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Kate Micucci, everybody.
This thing again, if you like start to look at all of the actors that are in this, you start to find some that are really funny. I mean, even like freaking Michael Cera as Robin is really great. It is a very inspired casting because his deadpan, like stupid voice that people hate from everything else because he's always the same character really works as Robin in this movie.
And I'm honestly surprised we never got Ralph Fiennes cast as Alfred, but this makes up for it.
Yeah.
You could see, I mean, honestly, it's either Andy Serkis or Ralph Fiennes for Batman 2022, right? Like, you have those two choices, as far as I'm concerned. They went with Andy Serkis, but Ralph Fiennes would have been just as great of a choice and would have worked. I mean, he's amazing in Lego Batman. It's pitch perfect casting, so.
Yeah, there's a lot of names in this. Mariah Carey is in it. Ellie Kemper's in this. Jenny Slate, Channing Tatum, Adam Devine. Just tons and tons of people. It's a riot start to finish. One of my favorites completely from this franchise. But now, like, this next question I feel like is going to go into so many different directions. Our third question always, what is the biggest impact that our topic has had on pop culture? Now, again, if you have not listened to Film Foundations before, what we mean by this is it doesn't have to be a certain film. It can be something philosophical. It can be something like inspiring future filmmakers to do X. It can be increasing awareness on X. It can be a film. It can say, The Dark Knight changed comic book movies for all of the future. Obviously, this is a very subjective question, but it's literally all about just interesting conversation. So, what do you think is the biggest pop culture impact from all of Batman?
I want to know where all these people are doing X and how we can get in on that. Because we're just like, on X. It's like, whoa, man, everybody's doing X. That's, and in the comments, they're already getting to it. Like, this is a massive beast to wrangle here.
Yeah.
This is, to get to this point in this conversation is going to be difficult to answer because, like you've already mentioned, like, this is all encompassing in a lot of ways. Look, Superman is like, that's in a lot of ways, like, that is where the superhero genre got really elevated in terms of like the big budget and the visibility. But I'm pretty sure, as far as I can tell, I'm concerned, as far as I would make this argument, Batman is like the superhero. He's the one that's been evergreen forever. We've had Batman in the 80s, we've had him in the 90s, we've had him in the 2000s, we've had him in the 2010s. The superhero genre is to thank because of the success of Batman. Everything comes from Batman. Literally, the MCU, the DCEU, all of it comes from the initial success of the Batman TV show, the continued success of the Batman series as it went on. The Batman movies have never not been profitable for the most part. They took a break from Batman and Robin because Batman and Robin was very poorly received, but it made back its budget. It made back its money. It was laughed out of the building because here's the thing, and this is the thing I kind of alluded to before. If you like Batman 1966, you know what you're going to love? Batman and Robin. You know why? Because Batman and Robin is pretty much just Batman 66 in 97. It's very campy. It's very over the top. And, again, like, Batman and Superman are kind of 1A and 1B in terms of our country's, like, big superheroes that had a big presence before the superhero time, the 2008 further. So, in a lot of ways, it's hard to answer this question without bringing up, like I did, bringing up Superman and the Superman movies, but Batman is, in a lot of ways, like, the superhero film and the superhero film series. Like, it's not that I don't see a lot of people arguing about it, but I don't see a lot of people arguing about who's their favorite Superman. Right. But we've already had a huge amount of discussion here between us and the audience about favorite Batman and favorite Bruce Wayne. Like, maybe we could do an episode in the future on Superman. It's not something I'm imminently super well versed on. I've seen enough, but I haven't seen all of it. So again, Christopher Reeves is amazing, but so is Adam West as Batman. So is, Michael Keaton. I think that the superhero genre as a whole has been one of those genres that really has built on top of itself in a way that, like, a lot of genres haven't. Westerns aren't a thing the way they used to be. Musicals aren't a thing the way they used to be. Superhero movies 40 years from now may be a long thing of the past that people are like, remember when superhero movies were in? That may be a thing because I'm sure people in the 50s and 60s couldn't fathom big budget musicals not continuing to be made into the 70s and 80s, but yet they really weren't the way they were before. So I think it is Batman and Superman in general have been the litmus test of where we're going with superhero stuff and the success of it. I remember the hype around The Dark Knight. It was insane. Yep. The ARG game that they had with it. All of the publicity that they did for it. This is the same time around, like, Cloverfield, when they're doing, like, ARG interactive stuff to, like, go find something in the real world that somebody planted. Like, that was The Dark Knight. So,
Arkham Asylum games that came after that.
Oh, yeah, Jesus Christ. That's, honestly, that's the other thing. The video games alone, like, that in and of itself kind of helps move the needle. But, again, like, I prefer my Batman as a detective, but Batman's been a superhero a lot of the time. So that's why my answer was the Batman 2022. So in a lot of ways, we're just now at the point where Batman's being treated the way I personally appreciate the character to be treated. But he has been a full-fledged world-saving superhero in most of his movies, which I think speaks to the idea of what the expectation was for these kinds of movies the further we get away from something that's kind of contained like Batman 1989. Like Batman 1989 is a contained thing. There's no other things going on anywhere else. There's no hints at fucking future sequels or any of that shit.
And there's no competition either. That was the other
Right, right. And that's the other thing. Batman exists essentially, Batman 89 exists very much in a vacuum in terms of the quality of that kind of movie being made, in terms of the quality at the time of that movie being made. But Batman is just, he is evergreen. He has always been around since the day I was born. Batman's been around. Batman will probably be around the day that I die and further on into the future. He is quintessentially the like American superhero.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm with Sibner. Like, I genuinely think whatever Reeves comes up with next is going to be the Batman movie. Like, I genuinely think that he has a better wrangle on this than anybody else has, other than not Michael Keaton, but Tim Burton. But I mean, Batman is just, he's been ever present. And so I think, what is his impact on pop culture? He has been part of the pop culture discussion forever. It's hard to avoid it. So again, it's hard to really pin any one thing down because this time, unlike some of the other episodes we've done, there are obvious answers on the other things we've done. There is way too much here to give just one singular answer.
Man, a few things here. So I agree with you. Obviously, this is a big deal. But the way that I wanted to talk about this was twofold. I know that I alluded earlier to superhero movies get dark and gritty because of Christopher Nolan, and you can look at that as a good or a bad thing. You're not necessarily wrong. Depends on your preference for these things. That's a very obvious answer because it's affected all of the films since 2008. That's been a big deal. But sadly, I kind of want to reach through the screen and punch Sibner in the face because I thought I was going to have a pretty unique answer. My answer is I think the fact that The Dark Knight and it's kind of an open secret that The Dark Knight and WALL-E not getting nominated for Best Picture is what led to the Oscars expanding into 10 films being nominated for Best Picture. And I can't imagine what smaller films since 2008 never would have been given the appreciation and like outward pop culture understanding of their existence if it weren't for them being nominated for Best Picture. And without them expanding to 10, gosh, some of these like from last year, I can't imagine the Past Lives would not have been in the top 5. I almost guarantee it. And that movie, I see it as a masterpiece. So I think the way that we're looking at these movies as a whole and comparing them is a big deal because the Oscars, no matter what, no matter how much you love award shows or not, and Sibner, I was obviously kidding. You just took my answer. It's one of those things where the appreciation level for some of these, it is literally an honor just to get nominated. And
Right.
that changes the trajectory of a film for the rest of film history. Without some of these, it was one of my favorite movies last year, so I'm going to harp on it. But without Past Lives being nominated for Best Picture, I could see Past Lives being completely forgotten in 5 years by most people. But because it was nominated for Best Picture, it is something that Celine Song is going to be able to look back on and put on a resume. And every movie that she comes out, Celine Song previously like Best Picture nominated, Best Picture Film Director. That's a big deal. It's one of those things that can carry literally a director's entire career, an actor's entire career, an editor's entire career, a producer's entire career. It can set somebody onto a film tangent that will allow them to create the next Gone with the Wind or masterpiece or whatever you want to say. There are so many things that come from that, and to literally double the number of titles. I mean, all props to Dark Knight and WALL-E for making them go, well, maybe we should expand this a little bit. I think that's I
I'm not going to disagree with you. I will say though, like to your point, and probably to the detriment of it though. Yes, they've expanded it to 10, but have they really ever gone outside of 5 movies to look at what's going to win?
I mean, the
That's
way
the problem. It's the problem, right? Like that's the problem because it's like all the they're just like, well, Avatar 2. Like, what are you on drugs? Like it's just
you
know what I mean?
Disagree with that. No,
I know.
don't.
I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, like elevating something is great, but at the same time, Cuba Gooding Jr. won an Academy Award and it didn't do shit for his career. There are exceptions that prove the rule sometimes.
I mean,
it's
he's
just
an
I get
asshole. That's why that's
yeah, I know, I get that, but okay. I mean, fair. Wow, gonna drag the good name of Cuba Gooding Jr. on this show, sir? How dare you? I'm just saying again. In a lot of ways, yes, I appreciate that they expanded it, but it feels like a little bit of a hollow victory. You know what I mean? Because like to Sibner's point, it should have been directors. If they're gonna expand movies, they need to expand directors. Then they need to expand actors. Then they need to expand everything. Because where do you stop? Where do you stop? That's the question. They expanded the movies to 10. Okay. But there's really only like 5 movies that are really ever considered to win. And so at that point, but come on, man. Avatar was. It is though.
No,
okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Because of how the Academy is built. There's literally thousands of people that are not even connected other than they're standing in the Academy across the country. There are so many people that will. Yes, Cuba could have won for Rat Race.
Yes. Boy, Rat Race came up twice today. Jesus Christ. Organically, of all things.
The way that I will prove that this is incorrect in my mind, the way that you're describing it, is because of the Barbie problem from last year. Like Greta Gerwig not getting nominated and Margot Robbie not getting nominated was literally only because the taste of thousands of parts of the Academy across the country are so eclectic. It's not just 5 because so many of those people have different tastes that are voting for different things. No, I do think that literally all 10 stand an actual chance because all it takes is for a portion of that to have just a slight majority of a different type of taste.
And yet, is anyone surprised when the things win, though? That's my point.
I mean, yeah,
Oppenheimer was going to win, and it did.
This is not the year to discuss.
Oh, okay. I mean, fair though. Fair though.
Things like Parasite, that is unprecedented. That's the type of thing that.
But I think Parasite would have gotten nominated anyways.
Oh, like it. Even with 10, people were like, "Whoa, this got nominated." I mean, America's like especially with the Academy, they're historically fairly racist.
Well, yeah, but they're not just. But I mean, it's surprising that they nominated Parasite, but they don't nominate films made by POC directors in this fucking country. Like, whoop-de-doo, they nominated someone from another country, but they don't give a shit about people here. I mean, that's the problem with the Academy, right? Is the makeup of the Academy is a bunch of old white folks. Still. No matter how many people you bring in, no matter how many other people are in the pool, there's still those people that have been there forever. And for me, it's a popularity contest. That's the real fucking problem here. I mean, ultimately,
of course it is. That's
but at the end,
but
at the end of the day, like you've said, all it really matters is, your movie gets that little qualifier in front of it, which for a lot of people is important. The nominated for. Yeah. So I think, look, it's the Academies are the Academy Awards are something I really don't like talking about for a whole host of reasons, because the less said about the Academy Awards, the fucking better. Because in a lot of ways, they don't determine the fucking taste of any one of us, especially not people that watch movies, especially people that sit and watch movies every day, like I know everybody in your audience does, like I do and you do. Look, Barbie was a great movie, but Barbie wasn't the best fucking movie last year any more than Oppenheimer was.
And that's why it didn't win. What I'm going to
say... But Oppenheimer won, and it wasn't the best movie of last year either.
What I'm going to say is, I honestly, like deep down, I think most people that love the Oscars will even say that they're truly important. I think the biggest thing is it's our day as movie lovers to literally come together and have the mainstream love of movies be normal. And that alone is important. I think that's something that we should do.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Look, this is subjective. That's the problem here. We are not talking objectively anymore. We are speaking purely subjectively. These are our opinions. This is not the kind of discussion we often get into on this show, which is very funny on top of everything else. This is probably the most contentious it's ever been between the two of us.
I don't think it's contentious. I think it's just a matter of seeing it differently. I think
Yeah.
that the expanding it to 10, I think it should go to directors as well, because they are literally the one creating the movie. But I don't think there's any like, we should expand every best actor to 10. Like, I don't think that's something.
Why not?
Is a question, because it would go forever. That's the biggest thing. And
I mean, wouldn't they love that though?
I mean, some people would, for sure.
Look, at the end of the day, like I said, the less said about the Oscars, the better for me, because they don't determine my favorite movies of a year. They don't determine the things I watch. I listen to my friends who watch movies, and I watch movies based on their suggestions. But here's the thing: to your point, that's not me. That's not you. That's not who these are for.
Right.
And the entire Academy is not racist. It's just the entire Academy is still catching up to the way that the rest of the country's ethnically diverse. That's what the problem is. There's a lag time. There's a lag time, isn't there? I mean, that's what this is.
I'm just laughing because his comment is declaring the entire Academy racist is a bit of a stretch. Nobody declared they were racist. I said historically they have been very racist. Like, it's by definition, the way that they have voted historically has been all white with them.
Oof. Oof. Hey, the Green Book won, everybody. Remember that? Hey, remember that movie? Let's talk about how great the Green Book is and how everybody's watching it. Oh, wait. Nobody fucking is. That's all I'm saying. Just like so many Oscar-winning movies that just flit out into existence and nobody thinks about them. We mentioned Cuba Gooding Jr. What's he up to other than being sued for things? The Academy's a hard thing to wrangle with, because speaking of Batman, you could go as far as to say Batman legitimized comic book movies because it was the first comic book movie to win an Oscar.
Yep.
In terms of acting, I'm sure one of the movies won for special effects or something. Correct me in the comments. But I'm talking about the big awards. And then I would actually go as far as to say Joaquin Phoenix doesn't win the Academy Award for Joker if Heath Ledger didn't win it first. I mean, again, legitimizing superhero movies, how do you do that? You hire Chris Nolan.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that was the intention of hiring Chris Nolan, was to legitimize superhero movies, but that's what it did. It legitimized them as not just superhero movies. They're movies, which again, like, that's stupid in and of itself as far as I'm concerned and kind of pedantic. But when we're talking about these kinds of things, like, so much of this is just out in the public sphere and there's nothing we can do about it anyways.
So let's move on to our last question.
By the way, and everybody bringing up The Blind Side, you guys are a bunch of trolls. But that's my point. Like, you can look, I know that this makes you kind of hot under the collar, but don't forget, not Gone with the Wind. That movie deserved it. Dances with Wolves won over Goodfellas, and so did Kevin Costner for Best Director. Holy moly. And you know what? The Departed winning for Best Film and Best Director, not Martin Scorsese's best film, not his best directed film. They were mea culping for what happened in the 90s.
Yeah.
And yeah, going back to before, the thing with Brokeback Mountain is exactly what I was alluding to. They couldn't give it to the gay cowboy movie. They gave it to the totally safe option.
It's not even a great movie. That's the hard part.
Crash? No.
Yeah.
It's a movie written at a time and a place when things were kind of that way, and it's not like that anymore if it ever was.
Right. All right. So the interesting way that we're going to end this discussion, question 4 is always, what is a cinematic bridge to our topic that we're discussing? So basically, what is something that if you are a listener to this and you've somehow never, ever seen a Batman movie, what is something that might clue you in that you would like these? If you would, liked something else first, it could be another franchise, it could be another film, it could be some filmmakers' films. So, Chris, what is our cinematic bridge to Batman?
I mean, this is like a gimme question, right? Because this is
Kinda, yeah.
yeah. Honestly, like if how do you approach someone and say, you want to watch a Batman movie? What do you like? Like, if you're into action movies, if you're amenable to big, over the top kind of action movies, like if you're into action movies, how have you not seen a Batman movie?
Right.
I wouldn't point you at the Chris Nolan stuff because it's not what you're going to expect. But the Batman, I mean, even Batman versus Superman is kind of a big, dumb action movie. I'm not saying all the Batman movies are dumb, but I'm also not saying that Batman needs to elevate itself to the heights of Stanley Kubrick. I mean, it's fucking Batman. Sometimes I just want it to be Batman. So as far as I'm concerned, like it kind of speaks for itself. Like if you're into superhero movies and you've never seen a Batman movie, what are you doing? If you've never seen an action movie, or if you've seen action movies and you like action movies, go check out Batman movies. I mean, this is a hard one because it's just like Batman. Like what? Either you're in or you're out, right? Like,
Yep.
I don't know how to put this. Like, I have plenty of friends, as I'm sure you do, who are like, I don't watch those MCU movies. And it's like, why? Those are dumb, lowbrow. And I'm like, but they're entertainment. Like not every movie that comes out has to check every fucking box of highbrow entertainment. So I don't know. I mean, again, like I would say like action movies in general. Maybe you're not resonating with superhero movies. Maybe that's not your thing. If that's not your thing, maybe give The Dark Knight a try because it's the least superhero-y of all of them other than the Batman. But as far as I'm concerned, like it's just a matter of are you in or you out? Because Batman is its own, in a lot of ways, yes, there are a bunch of movies, but they're all of a piece in a way, frankly. They're all very much of the same kind of thing. So that's my answer. What about yours?
I took an easy answer because I didn't want to think too hard on
Same.
this one. And I went just kind of specific, like the most comparable to Batman. And so I'm just going to throw out there, if you like the Iron Man story and the Iron Man trilogy, I think that you'll probably like the Batman films. It's another superhero without superhero tendencies because he has no powers. He's just a rich guy. It is probably the most like comparable type of story to what you get from many of these Batman movies. It's a guy that's, you know, down on his luck and trying to come back from something and working hard to help people. And yeah, thanks, Sibner. It's an obvious answer, but I think that Iron Man is the most comparable on that front.
I wouldn't say all the Batman movies are man against the world because you got Batman and Robin.
Oh yeah,
You
clearly
got,
not.
yeah, you got all kinds of stuff. Like, look, the other thing is Batman kind of, like we've already alluded to, is fluid within genres. So
Yeah,
that's
very
why I
much.
said, like, if you're into a certain kind of thing, you can be pointed more specifically in a certain direction with Batman. If you want campy, we can point you there. If you want serious, we'll point you there. If you want middle of that road, can point you there too. So that's the thing. Not all the comic book movies or comic book character movies are so fluid. They're kind of a thing. Like, I mean, Iron Man's kind of all the thing. Doctor Strange, kind of all the thing. Like, Batman is kind of all over the place, which is what makes Batman a fun character.
The best, I would say. We didn't talk about promo and all the plugging type stuff. Anything you want to shout out before we call it a night, Chris?
WeirdAngWayMedia.com. That's where you can go to hear more of my thoughts on things or me talking with other people about our thoughts on things. That's where you can find the audio version of this show, Film Foundations. And everything else that I work on pretty much can be found there other than Rankin' on Bond, which is me and Richard Haddam of Richard Haddam's Paranormal Bookshelf. He's also the writer of Under Siege 2 and The Mothman Prophecies, which he wrote with Matt Reeves, which I didn't mention here, but we will never get to talk to Matt Reeves because it's been essentially said to me directly that he doesn't want to do publicity if he doesn't have to, and this is tantamount to that, apparently.
He's above it now.
Yeah, well, or it's just he doesn't want to do it. He's a very private person, is what I've been told. But yeah, that's where you can find Rankin' on Bond, which is over at patreon.com/culturecast or patreon.com/projection booth at the $10 level and up. What about you, Ryan?
I'll just shout out the magazine again earlier that we talked about on this show. Check out the Physical Media Advocate. It's available on Amazon. Link in the description below if you want it in a store local to you. And when I say local to you, I mean world freaking wide. Like, this thing is being sold in Canada, Italy, Germany, the UK, Australia. You can get it on all of your local Amazons, but also I can have it on sale in your local shops. If you've got a contact or work at one or friends with somebody that works at one, let me know. I would be happy to talk about supplying wholesale versions of these and get it sold in your shop. There is a lot of people out there that I think would enjoy it, and I would be thrilled to have some assistance. The discussion tonight has been great. I appreciate everybody being a part of this. And I hope that you come back to check out another episode of Film Foundations. Like I said, every Wednesday, it will be available in the video version and the audio version. If you got any suggestions, questions, leave comments everywhere. We want to have a community surrounding this thing. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the show tonight.